Level 1. The candidate. You arrive at Scout Sniper School carrying 60 pounds of equipment through Carolina humidity that feels like breathing through a wet towel. Every step is heavier than it should be. Not because of the weight. Because of what it represents. The instructors are already watching. They're not talking, they're not encouraging, they're evaluating. Sorting. Categorizing. Potential. Marginal. Waste of time. Nobody tells you which one you are. Nobody tells you anything. Just where to stand. And when to move. The attrition rate is 70%. They mention it on the first morning like they're discussing the weather. Not dramatic. Not threatening. Just fact. 7 out of 10 of you will be gone before the end. Some will quit. Some will be cut. Some will break in ways that aren't visible at first, but become obvious over time. The first week isn't shooting. It's stalking. Not firing rifles. Not calculating ballistics. Moving. Across terrain. Without being seen. You low crawl through open fields while instructors scan with binoculars, searching for the smallest unnatural movement. A twitch, a shift, a mistake. If they see you, you don't argue. You start over. Again. And again. And again. You build ghillie suits from burlap and vegetation. Transforming yourself into something that doesn't look human anymore. Something that blends. With the dirt. The grass. The shadows. You learn to move inches per hour. Not meters. Inches. You learn something most people never understand. Patience is a weapon. And invisibility is power. Candidates begin disappearing. Quietly. One quits after a night exercise that leaves him hypothermic and shaken. 2 are cut after safety violations. 1 simply doesn't show up for formation. His bunk empty. His gear gone. Decision made sometime in the dark. Nobody talks about it. Nobody needs to. You stay. Not because you're the strongest. Not because you're the most talented. You stay because you refuse to imagine leaving. Every crawl through mud that seeps into your skin. Every insect crawling across your motionless face. Every failure that sends you back to the start. You file it away. Somewhere it can't weaken you. Somewhere it becomes fuel. The shooting comes later. And it humbles you. You thought you knew rifles. You grew up hunting. You hit targets that impressed civilians. But this is different. At 1,000 yards, the bullet doesn't travel in a straight line. The wind bends it. Temperature alters it. Air density reshapes it. Gravity drags it downward in a precise arc that must be calculated, not guessed. Everything matters. Everything. The fundamentals you thought you mastered are just the beginning. The final exercise breaks people. 4 days in the field. Minimal food. Minimal sleep. Maximum pressure. Your body stops distinguishing between mud and skin. Your mind simplifies. Just the next task. Nothing else exists. The instructors aren't watching your accuracy. They're watching your mind. Looking for collapse. Some perform perfectly. Until suddenly, they don't. Something inside fails. Quietly. Irreversibly. They're gone immediately. Not punished. Just recognized. Unsuited. Because this job requires something that can't be taught. Only revealed. You survive. Not because you're fearless. Because you discover something. Under pressure. Your mind becomes quiet. Not chaotic. Not panicked. Clear. The harder it gets. The clearer you think. It isn't courage. It's wiring. You graduate in the bottom third of your class. Not exceptional. Not weak. Competent. You receive your designation. Your orders. And you ship out to a team that needs bodies more than brilliance. This is where the real education begins. Level 2, the SPOTTR. Your team leader is Staff Sergeant Reyes. 4 deployments. Eyes that never fully relax. Even when he's sitting still, some part of him is still scanning. Still calculating. Still surviving. He's killed more people than you've met. And he carries it. Not visibly. Not openly. But it leaks through in small ways. The hesitation before entering rooms. The way he always chooses the seat facing the door. The silence after lights out, broken by dreams he never talks about. You're the junior man. Which means you're the spotter. The shooter gets the attention. The shooter pulls the trigger. But the spotter does everything else. You estimate range. You read wind. You identify targets. You confirm threats. You document outcomes. You are the shooter's external brain, processing reality so he can focus on execution. Your first deployment is to a country you're not supposed to name, doing operations that don't officially exist. The rules of engagement change weekly, sometimes daily. The enemy doesn't wear uniforms. They look like everyone else. Until they don't. You learn to see what others miss. Subtle abnormalities. The way someone walks. The tension in their shoulders. The unnatural positioning of hands. Tiny deviations from normal. Signals that violence is seconds away. Your first kill isn't yours. It's his. You just made it possible. A man appears on a rooftop 800 meters away. He's carrying an RPG, positioning it toward a convoy route. You confirm the target. You read the wind. You call the numbers. Reyes breathes. Adjusts. Fires. Through your scope, you watch the round arrive before the sound. One moment, the man is alive. The next moment, he isn't. The RPG falls beside him. Unused. Harmless now. You expected something. Shock. Horror. Triumph. Something dramatic. You feel none of it. Just professional satisfaction. The same feeling as completing any task correctly. The shot was clean. The decision was correct. The outcome was necessary. You file his face away. Somewhere it won't interfere with function. Reyes watches you afterward. Carefully. He's seen spotters break here. When theory becomes reality. When abstraction becomes irreversible. He's looking for cracks. He doesn't find any. He doesn't say whether that's good or dangerous. Months pass. You learn things school never taught. How air behaves differently at sunrise and sunset. How terrain reshapes wind in invisible patterns. How perfect positions rarely exist. How to improvise. How to wait. You learn when not to shoot, which is harder than shooting. You learn patience protects more lives than aggression. You learn deployment has a rhythm. Periods of intensity, followed by emptiness. Waiting. Always waiting. Friendships form. Fast. Because only they understand. Letters arrive from home, describing a world that continues without you. Birthdays. Events. Moments. All happening somewhere else. Without you. You learn Reyes. His patterns. His breathing. His tells. When he wants input. When he wants silence. You learn the rhythm of his trigger. The pause before commitment. The longer pause before restraint. Gradually, something happens. You stop being separate. You become extension. Observer and executor. Two minds. One system. This is what a sniper team becomes. Not two soldiers. One organism. And eventually, it's your turn to evolve. Level 3, the shooter. Reyes rotates home after his 5th deployment. Officially, it's a training assignment. Unofficially, everyone knows the truth. The drinking has become visible. The marriage is already over. And the weight he carries isn't getting lighter. You attend his farewell. It isn't emotional. Not openly. Men like Reyes don't show damage while others are watching. But you see it. In the way he avoids eye contact. In the way he leaves early. In the way he doesn't say goodbye directly. His replacement arrives a week later. Younger than you expected. A staff sergeant by rank. But not by experience. He outranks you on paper. But in reality, he depends on you. The hierarchy quietly inverts. Nobody acknowledges it. Nobody needs to. You become the shooter. Because the team needs one. Your first shot as primary shooter isn't dramatic. A confirmed hostile. 600 meters. Stable wind. Perfect conditions. You settle behind the rifle. Your breathing slows automatically. The world narrows. Breath. Pause. Squeeze. The recoil is familiar. Controlled. Predictable. You watch the round arrive. Impact. Confirmation. Target neutralized. You move. No celebration. No hesitation. Just procedure. This is the job now. But the easy shots don't define you. The hard ones do. The ones where certainty doesn't exist. Where variables multiply faster than you can control them. Where consequences expand beyond the target. The mission comes months later. A compound in a valley. 3 American hostages inside. Aid workers. Captured 2 weeks earlier. One execution video already released. Proof of intent. Proof of urgency. Time is limited. You position 1,400 meters away. Farther than any combat shot you've taken. The valley is unstable. Wind shifts constantly. Thermals rise and collapse unpredictably. Your spotter feeds you numbers. Corrections. Adjustments. Estimates. Guesses disguised as calculations. You wait. Hours pass. Watching. Memorizing patterns. Guard rotations. Movement timing. Behavior. The hostages appear briefly in a window. Alive. For now. But not for long. You don't think about their lives. You think about math. Wind speed. Distance. Angle. You think about execution. Because emotion interferes with precision. Sunset approaches. The light changes. Shadows stretch. The target moves into position. Just for a moment. A predictable pause. A narrow window. Your spotter calls the wind. It shifts again. You adjust. Some of it is calculation. Some of it is instinct. Thousands of repetitions condensed into a single decision. Breath in. Breath out. Pause. The trigger breaks. The rifle recoils. The round disappears into distance. Time stretches. Then. Impact. The guard drops instantly. No movement. No reaction. Just absence of life. Moments later, everything accelerates. The assault team moves in. Helicopters arrive. Extraction begins. 20 minutes later. The hostages are airborne. Alive. Because of one shot. 3 people who get to continue existing. 3 futures that didn't end in that compound. You don't celebrate. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like correction. Like restoring balance. Something prevented. Not something achieved. But something changes. Not externally. Internally. You realize something irreversible. You're no longer the observer. You're the one who decides. And that changes everything. Level 4, the instructor. You return to the school that made you. But this time, you're standing on the other side. Same Carolina humidity. Same fields. Same binoculars scanning for movement. Except now, you're the one watching. Evaluating. Sorting. Potential. Marginal. Waste of time. The cycle continues. It always does. The institution doesn't care about individuals. It produces capability. You see yourself in the candidates. The tension. The uncertainty. The quiet hope that they're strong enough. Some of them are better shooters than you were. Some are stronger. Faster. More athletic. But you already know something they don't. Talent doesn't predict survival. Mindset does. You watch them fail. Over and over. Trigger control mistakes. Breath discipline errors. Impatience disguised as confidence. You don't comfort them. You correct them. Precisely. Without emotion. Because vague encouragement creates vague shooters. And vague shooters miss. You develop a reputation. Harsh. Unforgiving. But fair. Candidates learn something about you quickly. If you criticize them. It's specific. Targeted. Actionable. Never personal. Never random. Your standards don't move. And eventually, they adjust to meet them. You discover something unexpected. Teaching exposes your own blind spots. You thought you understood certain techniques. But explaining them forces you deeper. Why does this work? Why does this fail? What principle exists beneath the rule? You become sharper. More refined. Because mastery requires articulation. Graduates from your cycle begin performing better in deployments. That's the only metric that matters. Lives preserved. Mistakes reduced. Shots made under pressure. But something changes inside you. Distance. You're building shooters. Not being one. You maintain your skills. You shoot regularly. You demonstrate. You qualify easily. But it's different. There's a subtle edge that begins to dull. Not physically. Psychologically. Combat sharpens something training can't replicate. The readiness. The quiet acceptance of violence as necessary. Instructors simulate pressure. Combat creates it. You begin missing something you don't want to admit. Clarity. Combat strips life down to essentials. Breath. Wind. Distance. Decision. Training includes paperwork, evaluations, administration, meetings. Combat never required forms. When the opportunity appears for one more deployment, you don't hesitate. You tell yourself it's about relevance, about staying sharp, about leadership continuity. But if you're honest, it's about wanting that clarity again. And so you return. Not as a student, not as a junior, but as something else entirely. Level 5, the team leader. The unit is different now. You notice it immediately. New faces. Younger. Faster. Lighter. They reference things you don't understand. Jokes from a generation that didn't grow up where you did. They call you old man. Half joking. Half serious. You're not old. Not really. But your body disagrees. Your knees predict weather before forecasts do. Your back remembers every hour spent motionless on unforgiving ground. Recovery takes longer now. What used to take hours takes days. What used to take days takes weeks. But you lead. Because experience compounds. You've seen enough outcomes to recognize patterns early. You've watched good shooters fail because of ego. You've watched average shooters succeed because of discipline. You know when to trust instinct. And when instinct gets people killed. This deployment is different. Higher stakes. Higher value targets. Better intelligence. More support. But harder shots. Always harder shots. The mission comes quickly. A target moving between vehicles. Distance, 1,700 meters. Far enough that small variables become decisive. Wind shifts unpredictably. Angle is imperfect. Time is limited. The window exists. But barely. Your team watches you. Waiting. Trusting. You don't rush. You slow down. Breath stabilizes. Heart rate lowers. You become smaller. Internally quieter. Your spotter feeds corrections. You adjust. You commit. The trigger breaks. The rifle recoils. Time stretches again. Impact. Clean. Immediate. The target collapses. Mission success. Later, the team talks about the shot. They exaggerate it. Expand it. Turn it into something legendary. You don't correct them. Morale matters. But privately, you know the truth. Luck was involved. The wind cooperated at the last moment. The target paused slightly longer than expected. Physics allowed success. It easily could have allowed failure. The shot that defines you isn't the one they celebrate. It's the one nobody talks about. The mistake. The intelligence was wrong. But it looked right. Everything aligned. Behavior. Position. Context. You made the shot perfectly. Technically flawless. But the target wasn't hostile. He was a civilian. Wrong place. Wrong time. Wrong interpretation. Dead because of you. The reports use different language. Collateral damage. Misidentification. Regrettable outcome. Words designed to soften reality. But reality doesn't soften. Reality stays precise. You killed someone who shouldn't have died. Nobody blames you. Command clears you. Review boards clear you. Your team clears you. But clearance doesn't erase memory. His face remains. More persistent than the others. Because this one wasn't necessary. Sleep becomes unreliable. When it comes, it brings him back. You learn something critical during this time. The soldiers who feel nothing are dangerous. Not because they're strong. Because they've lost the boundary that keeps violence controlled. Pain proves something still exists inside you. Conscience. And conscience keeps you human. You continue leading. Because leadership means carrying weight others don't see. The faces accumulate. Hostile. Civilian. Necessary. Unnecessary. All carried equally. Because the difference only exists on paper. Not in memory. Level 6, the Master. The title isn't official. There's no ceremony. No certificate. It's something your peers start saying quietly. Master. It means you've lasted. Long enough to become rare. Long enough to outlive statistics. Long enough to see multiple generations rotate through. It means younger shooters ask you questions they won't ask anyone else. Because they know you've seen what they're about to see. You split time now. Deployment. Development. Testing new systems. New optics that calculate ballistics automatically. Rifles that adjust for environmental conditions. Software that promises to remove human error. Engineers speak in confidence. Precision. Automation. Optimization. You understand what they don't. Human error creates failure. But it also creates restraint. Judgment. Hesitation when hesitation is necessary. An algorithm can calculate wind. It can't calculate morality. It can't decide when not to shoot. If you remove too much of the human element, you risk removing the boundary that keeps killing controlled. The machine doesn't carry weight afterward. The human does. Your final deployment arrives quietly. No announcement that it's the last. You just know. Somewhere beneath the surface. You watch your team differently. More aware. More present. Moments feel heavier. Even routine operations feel finite. You document things mentally. Small details. Light conditions. Voices over comms. The smell of cordite mixing with dust. You appreciate shots that once felt ordinary. Because you know they won't be repeated forever. The final shot isn't legendary. It isn't dramatic. A confirmed hostile. Medium distance. Standard wind. Clean execution. Professional. You don't realize it's your last shot until you're already on the transport home. Then it settles. Certainty. You will never do this again. 22 years. Hundreds of operations. Kills you stopped counting because counting felt wrong. You train shooters who train shooters. Techniques you refined are being taught by people who don't know your name. That's how institutions survive. The scope goes into a case. The case goes into a closet. You don't open it often. But you know exactly where it is. What you bring home can't be packed away. Faces. Both kinds. The hostile ones. The civilian one. The hostages who lived. The man who shouldn't have died. The smell of copper. The hypervigilance that made you effective overseas. But makes grocery stores feel tactical. Relationships that didn't survive the version of you required to exist. But also, the math. Convoys that weren't ambushed. Hostages that weren't executed. Attacks that never happened. People alive who don't know your name. The equation doesn't balance cleanly. It never does. You did what was asked. You did it well. Better than most. And now you're something else. Civilian on the surface. But underneath. Still wired for distance. Still aware of wind. Still noticing exits. Some nights, you don't dream about the shots you took. You dream about the ones you didn't. The hesitation. The target that moved before you committed. The life that continued because you waited. You wonder what that life became. Good. Bad. You'll never know. That's the nature of the work. One breath. One decision. One shot at a time. The discipline holds. Even after the rifle is gone.